What we are going to talk about today is right now, there is a mounting CEO succession crisis and leadership pipeline erosion. That's a mouthful.
Yep.
That's a little scary. And the gist of it is there's a disconnect. There's a lack of preparation of up and coming leaders. And I'm going to cite my sources here from Business Insider. I just want to read this short statistic here that right now there's a record executive turnover and very thin pipelines. In early 2025, 14.8% of S&P 500 companies saw their CEOs exit, and that is a rate far above the historical average of 11.3%.
Yeah.
That is 646 CEOs stepping down in a single quarter.
Right. Of Fortune 500s.
Right.
That's not even of everybody.
Right. Literally Fortune 500. And that should really make us pause. But wait, kids, it gets worse. Meanwhile, internal leadership pipelines are increasingly fragile as structural changes and job hopping by emerging talent leave companies scrambling for qualified successors. And as a result, 44% of new CEOs in 2024 were poached externally. Layci, help.
Yes.
What's going on?
I mean, the 44 poached externally, people may think, well, what's the problem with that? They're finding them. They're getting people in the seats. I want us all to recognize that, first of all, how long it takes to get someone up to speed that comes in from the outside with the culture, with understanding how things work, developing all of the relationships that are required to function at that high level. If you have a board you're reporting to, there's also that relationship and trust building that has to happen that takes time. And when you are bringing somebody in from the outside, you're losing years of historical knowledge, of understanding how things function, of knowing where the gaps are. That's all gone when you bring somebody new in, no matter how talented they are. There is a steep learning curve and you lose a lot of continuity. And it's not unusual when you bring someone in from the outside, existing talent that may report to that new boss, you usually lose somebody in that transition period as well. It's not uncommon. New leader comes in, there's somebody on the executive team that just does not work well with that new leader for a myriad of reasons, and you lose them. And that's more historical institutional knowledge that just walked out your door.
Yeah.
There is a lot to be said for putting in the work of developing your successor internally and identifying successors internally, but understanding it doesn't just organically, magically happen as much as we want it to.
Yes, that would be nice, but
Wouldn't
it doesn't.
Though? Yeah. But it doesn't. And I think the crisis, the erosion that they talk about is a lot of people think, oh, I know who the next person's going to be, but they sometimes don't even have a conversation with that person. They operate off of assumption, or they wait way too long to have the conversation. So that person is out because they're like, I'm going to look for opportunities somewhere else. Right. And they had no idea they were being eyed for succession. Yeah. And by the time that they've moved on to another company, even if you tell them when they're going to walk out the door, oftentimes they've already made that emotional and mental disconnect and they're moving on. Yeah. They're done. You got to catch them way before that. Yeah. The problem, besides just lack of communication, is no formal, intense leadership development. No obvious pathways either. We work with a lot of organizations that are operating at the 9+ figures. So these are not a mom and pop down the street. They might have started that way, which is cool. But these really large organizations, they have not put in the work to identify even a rubric for what do we look for in leaders here? What are we looking for in the next group of leaders that we want to bring up? And have we communicated it to them? Is there an obvious on-ramp and pathway to development so that people can know, I want X and this is how I get there. And this is what it takes to get there. I want to be in this seat of leadership. This is the pathway. So often we either never thought through the pathway or we haven't effectively communicated the pathway. Yeah. That is what we're seeing all over the place. I would say 1,000,000% echoes at multiple levels of business, not just the Fortune 500s. It's happening at all levels of business. Yeah. And that's so sad to think about
There could be so many young, capable leaders in these companies, well, in any company, where perhaps they were being considered for leadership, but because of, again, that weak pipeline, lack of communication, lack of a rubric or protocol, they had no idea that they were being considered or at least being viewed as a possibility. So eventually they leave because a better opportunity elsewhere awaits them. And if that could have just been communicated, you strengthen the pipeline, happier workers, better succession and continuity.
Right.
Yeah.